In the quiet village of Chandanpur, two boys named Rakesh and Suresh spent every afternoon under the great banyan tree. They shared secrets, snacks, and big dreams. While the wind whispered through the leaves, Rakesh often looked at the horizon, imagining the glittering cities beyond the hills. Suresh, however, looked at the dusty paths of their home, thinking of the people who walked them every day. Years passed like falling leaves. Rakesh worked hard and earned a scholarship to a university far across the ocean. On the day he left, the village gathered to say goodbye. Rakesh carried a heavy suitcase and a heart full of ambition. Suresh stood at the bus stop, promising to look after things at home. "Go find your world, Rakesh," Suresh said with a smile. "I'll be here, building ours." Rakesh's new life was a whirlwind of glass towers, glowing screens, and fast-paced meetings. He became a successful engineer, living in a penthouse that touched the clouds. He was always busy, always moving, and always chasing the next big goal. The village of Chandanpur began to feel like a distant, fading memory, a place that existed only in the background of his mind. Back in the village, Suresh became the local school teacher. He spent his mornings teaching children, like young Ravi, how to read, and his afternoons helping the elders with their letters. Suresh didn't have a penthouse, but he knew the name of every person he passed. He became a pillar of the community, the one everyone turned to when they needed a helping hand or a bit of wisdom. Rakesh's father, Madhav, lived alone in their ancestral cottage. He was proud of his son's success, but his bones were growing weary, and his house felt increasingly quiet. Every evening, Madhav sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, hoping for a phone call that lasted longer than a few rushed minutes. He was a man of deep roots, waiting for a branch that had grown too far away. One stormy evening, the weight of the years caught up with Madhav. He grew dizzy and fell near the garden gate. The rain began to pour, and the village grew dark. It was Suresh, walking home after a long day at the school, who spotted a familiar shape on the ground. Without a second thought, Suresh dropped his umbrella and ran to help his friend's father. Suresh carried Madhav inside and called for the village doctor. He stayed by the bedside all night, pressing cool cloths to Madhav's forehead and brewing warm tea. When Madhav finally woke, he saw Suresh's tired but kind eyes. Suresh didn't just provide medicine, he provided the presence and care that no amount of money sent from abroad could ever replace. Thousands of miles away, Rakesh's phone buzzed during a late-night board meeting. Seeing Suresh's name, he stepped into the hallway. When he heard what had happened, the silence of the polished hallway felt deafening. Rakesh looked at his expensive watch and his designer suit, and for the first time, they felt like heavy chains instead of trophies. He realized that while he had been building a career, he had neglected his foundations. Rakesh arrived in Chandanpur 2 days later. The air smelled of wet earth and jasmine. Just as he remembered, he ran to his father's house and found Madhav resting in the garden. When Rakesh knelt by his father's chair, the tears came freely. He apologized for being away so long, for forgetting that the most important project in his life was the man who had given him everything. That evening, Rakesh and Suresh stood once more under the great banyan tree. The village was quiet, and the stars were beginning to peek through the leaves. Rakesh realized that Suresh's path hadn't been smaller than his own, it had been deeper. He promised to visit often and eventually move his work closer to home. They learned that dreams are worth chasing, but only if you remember the soil that allowed you to grow.